Good evening and welcome to another episode of Education Matters. I'm your host, Harry Jackson, and welcome to our show on usanow.tv produced by Sam Mataro. Tonight, we have a special episode. We just wrapped up Banned Books Week. Our guests tonight are Stephanie Grizzly Mama Bear Lundquist-Arora, as well as Clint Thomas, Loudoun County parent. See, I hear a little ringing in there. We'll get to this. So we're going to do a quick introduction. Stephanie, Clint, welcome to Education Matters. Oh, it looks like
show tonight.
You're muted. Oh, welcome, Mr. I can hear you now. Welcome, Mr. Thomas. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks for having me, Harry. Appreciate it. Hi, Stephanie.
Great. Well, we're going to get to what you have to talk about in Loudoun County. That's very, very important. But let's talk about Stephanie. Let's talk about the Banned Books Week from the American Library Association. For those of you good parents who aren't aware, this week the new American Library Association appointed a new president, Emily Drabinski, a self-described Marxist lesbian, who decided to host a Banned Books Week. Let's go over this clip. She had an interesting interview. Sam, can you roll that? Let's go over this. We're going to have a discussion about this interview and its implications.
Yes, I can. Here we go.
All right.
Making Idaho about something more than that. Making Idaho is like a place where people come from that have big success and that are committed to what all Idahoans I know are committed to, which is maintaining the right for people to build the kinds of communities and families that work for them.
Emily Drabinski is proud to be an Idahoan, as you could hear, and just as proud to be the next president of the American Library Association. But who are they? Well, the ALA has been around since 1876, and they help advocate for American libraries at the federal level. They call themselves the foremost national organization providing resources to inspire library and information professionals to transform their communities through essential programs and services. Idaho State Librarian also has to be a graduate of a library school accredited by the ALA. They even have a motto: the best reading for the largest number at the least cost. Pretty good one. Well, Emily, the interim chief librarian at City University of New York, just became the president-elect of the National Association on Wednesday, just 2 days ago. Emily grew up in Boise, but left at the age of 18 to attend Columbia University with the intent of becoming a writer. And like a lot of those who end up in New York with big dreams in the Big Apple, it helps to have a backup. So in search of a steady paycheck, Emily got her library degree and believed she would just work at the library, helping people find books and stuff. Well, now she's going to be doing a lot more than that. Emily told us today, as president, she wants to provide people the tools they need to organize locally, teach them how to push for the kinds of public policies they need to run their local libraries, which seemed like a pretty good jumping off point to get into local libraries and this year's legislative session here in Idaho. Accusations of libraries peddling pornography and obscene materials to kids, lawmakers trying to remove their exempt status from having any such items on their shelves, and ultimately cutting the Idaho Commission for Libraries budget by $3.8 million. So what does the Idaho-raised president-elect of the American Library Association think about what has been happening with libraries in Idaho?
I even though I've been gone from Idaho since '93, I very much feel like an Idahoan at the root. And so try to keep up on the policy and what's going on. And it seems like what's happening in the legislative sort of arena is really quite scary.
For example, they were trying to remove libraries from exemption when it comes to, I guess they just call it pornography. And there was a big pushback from librarians saying, look, this isn't on us. Mm-hmm. This is about parents.
Yeah, I think it's like concerted political efforts to sort of push this sort of story about what libraries do, which seems very, it's anathema to what libraries actually do, that we are sort of pushing pornographic materials on our patrons, and it's really not what we do at all. Like all our, librarians, especially public librarians and school librarians, they're members of the community. They are professionally trained to select, acquire, and maintain collections that meet the needs of their communities. That's just what we do as a job. There's no big library agenda,
So that bill didn't pass. eventually. So that, I mean, that kind of went away. But
like the bill didn't pass, but when you are just trying to do your job in your community, getting paid in many cases barely a living wage to do that kind of work, and you're really committed to things like helping kids read, when you have to deal with that kind of state attack, it has long-lasting implications for your experiences at work. It would make me feel like I was not safe in that environment, that I could not be supported in the work that I did for the families and community members that I serve.
They cut $3.5 million federal dollars from library commission here in Idaho.
I mean, I can't think of a more short-sighted legislative action. Yeah.
Why not?
You know, I think you look at libraries as I think of them as one of the last social safety nets for our communities that serve everybody. You know, everybody is welcome in the library. We work very hard to make that true. And, you know, I think we have legacies of racism to undo, but overall, we have collections and services built to serve everybody in the community. And so when you cut funding for that, you're cutting funding for everyone.
Do you feel like this is a movement in the country right now?
Yes, definitely. It's a concerted movement. I think it's very organized. I think we have a lot of evidence that these are not one-off parent complaints or singular pieces of legislation. But, you know, you look at what's happening in Idaho and Tennessee, and even in the state of New York, we're facing issues like this and really incredible upticks in book challenges. And all of us are sort of facing those kinds of challenges. And it definitely seems, and they're just too similar from place to place for me to think that they're not as kind of organized. And we need to be as organized as they are as we push back.
I know you kind of touched on this, but if you were back home here in Idaho and saw this happening this last couple of months, what would you have to say about it?
This isn't the Idaho I grew up in. This isn't the community that I know that Idaho can be. This is not the kind of close-knit and supportive community that I grew up in, going to Madison Elementary and then North Junior High and Boise High and spending my time on the high school debate team at the Boise State Library, being so cool because I could use this big university library. I mean, I have so many warm memories of Idaho, and a lot of them revolve around the library. And so to see people coming, I think, with agendas that are far to the outside of what most ordinary Idahoans think is appropriate, right? I think seeing those kinds of attacks that undermine the connections that we have with one another, it's really devastating. And I think if I was in Idaho, I'd be doing what I know a lot of the Idaho librarians are doing right now, and library workers, and that is sort of standing together and trying to figure out a way forward through this these kinds of attacks.
And Emily said that's going to be her focus when she actually takes office a year from now. Emily said if there's a big library agenda at all, it's to support the First Amendment, the right to read, and the right to express ourselves. Those kind of profession-wide commitments. Emily's tenure, like I said, won't start until July 2023. So for the next year, she's president-elect. She's going to be learning how to do the job and continuing her support of local libraries.
All right, that was interesting. Your initial thoughts?
Well, Harry, I think I used to be one of the parents who I've been a small L libertarian my whole life, so I'm not a big fan of censorship generally, and it's been more recently that this issue has come to my attention as I've been kind of digging into some of these challenged books. And I when people would talk about library books with me, I would say I'm a big fan of Catcher in the Rye and The Grapes of Wrath and 1984, and those are all previously banned books. So I used to think this isn't really my bag. This isn't really my thing. But then really recently, I came to realize. Yeah, I came to realize this is different.
It's I mean, Clint, what do you think? Do you think it's kind of like her demeanor, her style of communication, as if she's under attack or library workers are under attack by a concerted political agenda? I mean, what were your thoughts of just her interview? We'll get into the material a little bit.
It seemed like a bit of a victim status. I'm oppressed. I do know from personal experience, librarians feel like they are special class. They are the keepers of the kingdom when it comes to gender and race ideology. And we've had it even happen here locally with a friend of ours where a daughter went into the local public library and was seeking out a book. And the librarian immediately referred her to the gender section. It was just amazing what's going on in our in our libraries.
Well, we'll get there. As they view libraries as a social net. It's kind of interesting that to your point. I mean, she's a self-described Marxist that likes to view everything through lens of race or gender. And in that case, if you're looking for a book, why are you steering somebody immediately to the gender library? That was certainly inappropriate. So let's just go into it. So Stephanie, you've had recently an op-ed published in the Town Hall. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I posed the question, if a 12-year-old boy isn't allowed to walk into a convenience store and buy a magazine full of naked women, why would he be able to walk into a library and check out a book that has a whole bunch of pornographic images? And it's not an exaggeration. I state pretty explicitly what's happening in those books. And it's actually, some of them are more kind of illustrative of sex acts than just a simple magazine full of naked people. And so it's kind of crazy. This 12-year-old isn't allowed by federal law, because the material is explicit, to walk into a convenience store and buy this magazine, but he can, at 12 years old, without the consent of his parents, walk into his middle school library and get, especially genderqueer, Lawn Boy, and All Boys Aren't Blue. He can get, and the list goes on, but I mean, the kind of pornographic scenes in these books are just, they're shocking. And when you talk to people and you say that all these banned books, we all think 1984 Catcher in the Rye, because this is what people bring to our attention, that these books used to be banned, but it's different now. Mm-hmm. It's much different.
It is a little different. It's so much different. And I believe that Mr. Binsky had mentioned that children need access to this critical information, but they also, and I would actually say that they actually are mocking in many ways the ignorance of the parents. So Sam, can you bring up their banned books week? Is that link still up? Do we have access to that? I think I have it under 2A. Yes, under 2A. Bannedbooksweek.org. There we go. Where books unite us, they don't divide us. So this was an event that was hosted from the 18th to 24th of September. It just concluded yesterday. And on this book, this is promoted by the ALA. Now, many of you may have heard that there are some books that are explicit. We talked about Lawn Boy, Genderqueer, All Boys Aren't Blue. Here we actually have a book ban list, and they're trying to promote these books. And would anyone guess who's actually chairing this book? The banned books committee. The honorary chair is none other than George Johnson, the author of All Boys Aren't Blue. Now, for those
the number
of you
3 book,
that are not, the number 3 book. All Boys Aren't Blue, and I think I have my copy of it, because you just don't want to take and read a book out of context, or read a paragraph or just a page, but because you want to read the page in context. So this is the book, All Boys Aren't Blue. This is just number 3 on the list, and so these are actually in our school libraries. And if you're a parent, you're not aware that this material may be in your children's library as young as 10. And so, there's these great passages. Have you either one of you read the book?
I've read
Parts
several
of
of them, and it's quite disturbing that it would be given to a minor.
I would agree with you. I think we're talking about pages 198 and
207.
Oh, wow. 207. 207.
198 to 207. It's a long scene.
It's a very long scene. For those, we have to put a parental advisory warning when we talk about it. I have the list up there. We talk about, basically it's an 8-page scene where he goes into graphic detail describing incestuous gay sex, where he's being sexually molested by his he's at this age 13 by his cousin, who is 17 or 18 at the time. And so that's number 3 on the list. Anyone want to take a guess at what's number 2?
Lawn Boy.
Lawn Boy. I was going to read it. I think we did for the sake of time. I wasn't going to go into it, but I think the Lawn Boy one. This one's not as bad. Okay. Oh, here we go. Page 91, where it says parental advisory warning. Right here. It says, what if I told you if I touched another guy's dick, I said. Nick waved me off and turned his attention to a beer. What if I told you I sucked it? He said, please, will you shut up already?
Harry. Let me stop you.
Yeah?
Because
Right.
I do want to. I didn't realize you were going to launch right into it. we should have said. I'm Sam, by the way. Sorry for the rough start to the show. We had some technical issues with YouTube.
Well, this is all right.
So
All right,
anyway,
so you said-
before we go, we are all adults here. And,
All adults.
And it's very important, we believe, as a company, as individuals, as citizens, we're all on the same agreement here. And we're risking YouTube striking us, and it is what it is. However, we want to demonstrate the absurdity of what it is that we're talking about here by going ahead and exposing this content on this stream. Not marked, it's just marked public. So we're going to see what happens. But parents, even if you are an adult and you have sensitive ears, you really, truly have been warned that what you are going to hear is shockingly graphic. And then I'm hoping, Harry, we can get to what you guys are doing and the recent news up in Loudoun County.
Up in Loudoun, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
all right,
So give us an example of what we're talking about. Sorry
right,
for the
so-
interruption, but you've been warned.
Yeah,
Here we go.
We've warned it. So anyway, we were going to go into that one, but I just realized it is 8:30. So let's go into some of the scenes. So Stephanie, you actually wrote about genderqueer. Sam, can you start going through some of the scrolls and some of the issues that we have in this book? This is the number one most challenged banned book. Now we're talking about with parents. Most parents are not aware of the material that's in these books. We did a show earlier on Education Matters. We brought in members from the Pride community, and most agreed. And at the end of that episode, that the material it was obvious that they hadn't reviewed it. They did agree that it was at the point that it's explicit, it was pervasively vulgar, and it didn't have any literary value, and it would be a reasonable person could assume that could be grooming material. Sam, did you able to get to those segments? So these are some of the segments here that they have here. How you can see where it's having someone perform oral sex. Now, this isn't just one. This is actually pervasive throughout the material. Remember, this is in middle school, some cases. Oh, this one was giving information about sexting. Go on, guess, Clint, Stephanie.
What is the redeeming value of this? That's what just blows my mind. It's amazing that it's all part of the sexual liberation theology that it's really become a religion in our schools. The state has deemed that it has the right to sexualize our children. Meanwhile, SOL scores are still not where they were 3 or 4 years ago. It's really become out of control, and parents need to wake up.
And to completely desensitize them and to give parents absolutely no right to decide what their children should or, should be seeing at all.
Sam,
I mean, it's crazy.
Sam, we've got the more important ones were still up there. Sam.
Yeah, what this is really all about is the breaking down of every traditional value possible so that it desensitizes, like Stephanie said, and it actually removes any sense of morality in our students. It desensitizes them and numbs them to traditional values, not only just sexual values, decency standards, but really American values. That's why when you go in our schools, Harry, now you see more pride flags than you do see American flags. This is something that parents need to wake up to leading into the November elections.
How is this okay? I mean, an adult wouldn't even feel comfortable reading something like this on a bus or in a public area. Like if you had this book and you were looking at these images, just a person reading, I mean, this is obscene. You wouldn't even want to read this in public, let alone give it to a 12-year-old. I don't understand how you could even justify this.
Yeah, it's just not developmentally appropriate. I'm a national certified counselor. It's just not developmentally appropriate for a minor to be viewing this material. They need to be focusing on traditional academics. And certainly, Harry, you and Stephanie are doing a good job of trying to bring this to the forefront so parents can be informed.
Sam, Sam, you brought up a few here. There was another one that was, I sent it to you via email. This is the one that really should get parents outraged.
These were the ones that were texted to me, I believe. Let me check my email.
Check your email. Check your email.
Let me do that, and I can pull them in.
Yeah. So, Sam's bringing that up. I mean, this is the material that the American Library Association is claiming it contains critical information that your kids should have access to and to explore a library. When you have a library selection policy, it's supposed to meet two criteria. It's supposed to encourage your child to become a lifelong learner, and I think most of us support that. And also, with a library selection policy, it's supposed to encourage. There's supposed to be material within that library that every student can go in that library and connect with something to connect with the understanding that not all material connects with every student. So I guess
I did find them, Harry. Let me give me a second. I'll pull them in the show.
Yeah. So some of the questions like with these books is that do they provide literary value? And we showed just 3, but there's even more that Sam's bringing up, particularly with this work. This is the number one challenge book in the country, and we're not talking about Catcher in the Rye. We're not talking about 1984, or even Fahrenheit 9/11. We're talking those are works clearly that have literary value. We're talking about something that the question was that how would you justify the literary value of this work? And does this work desensitize children to inappropriate touching? Does it desensitize them to explicit and sexual nature? And does it make them more susceptible to possibly being exploited?
So Harry, get this. At a recent committee meeting this past week with Loudoun County Public Schools, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, there were actually proponents of this material stating that minors, needed to be exposed to this material for their good so that they can know what abuse looks like, and totally ignoring the fact that this is grooming and this is abusive. My goodness, a lot of people know about how even the group Gays Against Groomers came out recently and said if a parent is not involved in knowing if their child is leading a double life at school or being exposed to this material, then schools are participating in grooming and abuse. This needs to stop right now. We need new laws, by the way, as well, on decency standards. This material, unfortunately, does not meet the 3 standards of indecency under the current Virginia Code section on these matters. So that also needs to change.
What is the code of standards for indecency?
We've met with local police here in Loudoun. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I interrupted.
So it's interesting that we're supposed to be, this is supposed to teach children what abuse looks like, because in one of the books, All Boys Don't Wear Blue, All Boys Aren't Blue, it's the 9-page scene of the sexual assault by the boy's older cousin, like the 13-year-old is getting sexually assaulted by the 18-year-old. And the entire scene is how much the 13-year-old enjoys it. And that's the point of the scene, is that the 13-year-old just genuinely enjoyed this abuse. So I'm not sure how that teaches anybody what abuse looks like, or if the victim in this case is enjoying it a lot in the scene. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's a ridiculous argument.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really sad that the other side feels like your child should have access to anything and everything. The government has no right to, and in fact, they can't fund every possible book, every possible magazine in our public schools. That's not the goal or the mission of public schools, is to have access to every piece of material. And I've recently tweeted about this. Peddling smut is still grooming and abuse, whether you're a teacher or a librarian or a pedophile. If this material was shown to my children, I could be brought up on CPS charges, but somehow an education expert with a degree or a license is deemed to be okay. That's not right.
Yeah, let's go before we go back to the one slide, Sam. This is one where they're talking about a brother and sister having a discussion whether or not they tasted themselves. And my question is, like, who knows of a brother and a sister that talks to each other like this about this? 7-year-old book was just priceless. Yeah. It's vulgar. Now,
It's just a ruse. It's a ruse to say that we're trying to get rid of 1984, The Odyssey, Handmaid's Tale, Catcher in the Rye. It's all a ruse by these school systems.
Oh, and
everyone knows we're trying to get rid of pedophilia and all the other stuff that doesn't.
Oh, and let's go to that next one. This is the worst of it. I mean, Sam, that you went there. Not that one. The other.
The one after
the
that.
The one after. Yes, really, that one right there.
The way this gets changed, Harry, is these board members need to be voted out. These boards have failed. These parents need to rise up and vote these board members out. They have failed.
And we're going to go into Loudon next. So for this one, for those of you that are looking at what you're describing here, this is an asexual teenager fantasizing in the context of Plato's Symposium. For those of you that aren't aware of Plato's Symposium, that is where it's promoting pederasty. And that picture, that graphic, that's actually from a pottery city museum. But the ancient Greeks did practice pederasty, where you would have men having sex with boys. And this book right here is one where it's depicting a child. Well, yes, she's masturbating that to fun home. And then as you scroll down, she's then fantasizing to that depiction of a boy being raped, essentially by an older male in pederasty. I would say that's grooming material. I mean, but the ALA and Emily Drabinski saying that's critical information. And more importantly, and this is what matters, local elections matter. And let's talk about what's going on in Loudon. Nick, can you give us Clint, can you give us a breakdown? What is going on in Loudon? There's an election, I understand, that's going on. That's coming up.
Oh, yeah, November 8th. There's 2 seats open on the 9-member Loudoun County School Board. And so we're certainly looking for, decent, conservative value people to start the process of flipping the school board back to sanity. And then we'll finish the job next year in November of 23. But, just this past Thursday night, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee met to discuss a new policy 5055, which I think Sam may have a picture of. It actually just amazed me that we actually need a policy on sexually explicit content in our schools. Why do we need material that talks about sexual excitement, sadomasochistic abuse, coprophilia, urophilia, fetishism? And what's even more amazing is that they even discussed and admitted in the meeting that they don't even know what they have in their schools. So they're not even sure if they're going to be able to meet the required January 1st deadline to comply with the VDOE guidelines. So they're going to have to actually go through and develop a rating system or an inventory of sorts for each school to know what sexually explicit content they have. And it allows parents to opt out. But Harry, my whole argument is, why can't parents opt in? Why can't it be an opt-in system where you even have parents on the front end?
I think that there's a lot of support for that, not only just from the right but also from the left. And we talk about like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, data privacy rights, people, and as well as in Europe. I mean, the whole structure, the GDPR principle, the concept of the inherent right to privacy, opting in. So you mentioned before, like you had you said you want somebody with conservative goals, but should politics even be in the classroom?
The problem is that I don't know that education can be amoral or value-free completely. I think there's a certain sense of decency and morality that has been removed from the public schools. If you really want to go back into the history, John Dewey over 100 years ago started progressive ideology in the public schools to get rid of the Western Christian paideia. It eventually in the 60s became the American Progressive Paideia. And now we are deeply into the cultural Marxist paideia, where race and identity politics rules the day, and that's why you see so much proliferation of this sexual liberation stuff. It's deemed as a way to free people, and it actually enslaves them. That's what's sad about it. It actually tricks kids into thinking they need to see this.
Even though we can never be politics free. Even though we can never be apolitical, because people are humans, so they make mistakes, they can start doing things which would make it better in the classrooms, arguably. I mean, I just recently published an article in the Federalist that there was a school district in Wisconsin, and the school board passed something where the teachers weren't allowed to have political flags in the classrooms, or any flags in the classrooms for religion or politics. So they had to take down all of their BLM and pride flags and all of any kind of political support for any candidate or current current politician. And I think that's a great place to start. I mean, it's not restricting a teacher's First Amendment. It's actually just encouraging professionalism. I mean, the government accountability in the office in the federal government, which are government auditors who go around to different departments and deal only with adults, for the sake of professionalism, have to take down all of their bumper stickers and anything which can be deemed political when they go do those things. So why would it be that teachers who have such extraordinary influence over our children are allowed to hang flags or pictures or any kind of endorsement of any political candidate? I mean, these are the types of things that we can start doing to get politics out of the classrooms, even if we can't do it perfectly.
I would agree with you. I mean, as we're seeing the decrease in the SOL scores, and they're now trying to use ideology and social justice. You're right. It isn't professional. It's a lack of professionalism, and you adhere to standards of professionalism because it denotes competency. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, by not having required to be professional, you're kind of not requiring teachers to be competent. I think the scores kind of show that. So we're talking about
there are pride flags. I'm sorry to interrupt you. There are pride flags over every classroom door in our local high school. You talk about political ideology. This is becoming not only political, but religious. And so, I tell people all the time, this is not a left versus right political issue. This is a parental issue. And parents need to wake up. If they expect their kid to get on the yellow school bus every day and go to a school where they're, between K through 18, going to experience 16,000 hours of indoctrination over their entire educational career before they go to college, parents need to wake up to what their children are being taught. It's not the school system that you grew up with.
No, absolutely.
It's so true. And even the ALA is saying that the reason that we're trying to object or challenge certain books is because they have characters or authors who are people of color or are gender diverse or sexually diverse. And it's not the protagonists of the book that we have an issue with. And this is, as you said, a parent issue, not a partisan issue or any kind of identity issue in terms of that. What we're actually objecting to is pornography. It's not that some book has a gay character that people have a problem with. It's that the images that we just saw, this is pornographic. And so to just trivialize parental complaints and challenges to books to say that we have an issue with these things because we're bigots is completely ridiculous and misguided. It's a distraction, a smokescreen.
That's a perfect way to say it, Stephanie. It's to add to that, as a father of 5 daughters, I feel the whole, the equity movement itself has become a religion, and it actually denies the rights of women to privacy and respect. So we've gotten off the rails here. We've forgotten that there's actually 99% of our student body who deserve the respect and the privacy of the bathrooms. And that's why Governor Youngkin actually just about a week ago, I guess, released the 22 model guidelines on privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents in Virginia public schools. It's being known as the Parents' Rights Manifesto.
And it's amazing that that's even being fought. So let's talk about some of the candidates, because elections matter. And I believe that there's pretty a big delta between the professional experience, demonstrated professional competency with amongst the candidates. And you're right, this does not have to be a political issue. Like I'm wearing purple for a reason, right? I'm a former Democrat. I supported Governor Youngkin. I am much more towards the center. So, I mean, but we talk about, but the show is entitled Education Matters. I think we can pull politics out of the classroom completely. We should be focusing on educational excellence in our school system. We should be, most parents want to be involved. There should be transparency. There should be opting in. These are common themes, and we don't want to see pornography under the guise of education. That is called grooming material. So let's talk about some of the candidates. I think there's a graphic we have of the 3 candidates in broad run. Let's go through this. Clint, you're familiar with these individuals.
Yeah, so this is a comparison of the 3 candidates running in the Broad Run District, which is one of the 2 seats up this November 8th. And so we're encouraging everyone here in Loudoun in Broad Run District to go out and vote. The candidate on the left is Andrew Hoyler. He's the incumbent for that seat, known largely as a moderate, but he is relatively soft on some of the issues that matter to parents when it comes to policy 8040 and other things. As you can see there, he's voted on some things that are certainly left of center. In the middle, you have Tiffany Polifko, a newcomer. She is conservative down the line, history and special ed, and has 2 kids, I believe, in LCPS, and just a real fighter for parental rights. Tiffany will stand up for parental rights down the line. She's great. And then on the far right, you got Nick Gothard, which is actually a young man, 22 years old, no children. He is a strong advocate for everything left. He is nominated or endorsed by the Loudoun County Democratic Committee, and certainly doesn't have the experience a lot of people think that a school board candidate would want. So parents have some choices in Broad Run for sure.
Well, let's talk about this.
We have that issue in Fairfax County, a really young one with no children, no experience, a $4 billion budget. It's been a nightmare. Abraham Ramesh has not done the best things.
Yeah, elections matter.
That's not a great way to go.
That's not a great way to go. But elections matter. Let's talk about it. I mean, just because somebody's left doesn't mean they can't be a good educator. I mean, I teach at a number of colleges that, there's a big left influence. That just because you're left doesn't mean that you're horrible education. I think there are other things here that might indicate they may not be good in the education space. Noticing one, their lack of experience, 27, 22. We talk about parental rights. We're dealing with, there is a Marxist influence here, and that think that they should be raising their kids and not you. They talk about the CRT. Now, I can say I'm a diversity advocate. I am very rabidly anti-CRT because it tries to peg. It's a pathological framework that restricts the reasoning of the mind. It identifies people by group and not individual ability. It's certainly not what Dr. Martin Luther King would certainly advocate for. He certainly would not be for a critical race theory tenet that basically teaches if you're a minority that you are a simpleton. I find that extremely insulting, particularly that I've got my 3 gifted kids. My 3 children are all gifted. Myself, I got a doctorate through master's degree, so I don't want anyone to tell me that I'm a simpleton, I don't understand it, and I need a savior. Very, very insulting. Just from my perspective. Now I can see that it definitely goes after, it is racism against white people. Let's just call for what, there is that element too.
Yeah.
Harry,
the MESAC committee just recently spoke before the last board meeting here in Loudoun, September 13th. And it was just one CRT tenant after another publicly. So they can say they don't teach CRT, but they still teach the teachers the tenets of CRT. And the MESAC, the Minority Student Achievement Council that is endorsed by the board, sees systemic racism in everything. So it's still deeply embedded in education here in Loudoun and Fairfax.
Guys, before we go too much further here, we are pushing 9 o'clock. I'd like to go ahead and take the opportunity to invite the public to the Zoom room.
Oh,
if you go
absolutely.
I'm going to go ahead and open it up for the next 40 minutes or so. And we're going to keep it civil, of course, but the point of this is open and honest public discourse. So if you'd like to join the room, click the link in the show description. And real quick, before we proceed here, Clint, you had provided me with a little sound on tape here, a clip of you speaking at a recent meeting. You want to set that up for me, and I can go ahead and play that real quick.
Yeah, this was
Clint,
thanks,
can I ask you
Sam.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this was an interview last Thursday before the curriculum committee met regarding policy 5055. I was being interviewed by Fox 5 News here locally.
That we even have a policy on sexually explicit content to begin with. I mean, how far have we gone off the rails that we actually have to have a policy on when a child can understand sexual excitement?
So your children are exposed to sexually explicit content here in Loudoun County Public Schools unless you opt out as a parent. That's just insane to me. There's no redeemable value to this.
Wow. Oh, elections have consequences. So we talked about the broad run. There's another candidate that's running, Mr. Rivera, I believe, out in another district.
Yeah, Mike Rivera in Leesburg is going up against Erica Ogdegebi. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. The seat is actually being vacated by Tom Marshall, a longtime education advocate here in Loudoun. Tom Marshall can't even be endorsed by the local Democratic committee, LCDC. They didn't feel like he was left enough, so they've thrown their endorsement behind Erica. But Mike is a strong proponent of parental rights, a police detective here in Leesburg, 2 kids, special needs. two kids in public school. So he's a great advocate for parental rights, right down the line on all the things that matter to parents, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. I think Mike would be a great choice.
Well, I think
Clint, can I ask you a question about the broad run election?
Yeah, sure.
I'm wondering, so Tiffany Polifka, I met her back in the spring, and I think she's fantastic just as a person generally. She was great. But I wonder, is there some concern that the moderate and the incumbent and Tiffany Polifka are going to split some of the conservative and moderate vote, and then you're more likely to push that 22-year-old leftist into the seat because of the split vote between the incumbent and Tiffany Polifka? Is that an issue or not so much?
I've heard people voice that issue or concern, but I personally don't hold to that. I actually feel, if anything, the vote could be split between the moderate Andrew Hoyler, the incumbent, and Nick Gothard, the young kid who's being endorsed by the LCDC. And I think actually Tiffany wins in a three-way race. Because I think
she's fantastic. I hope you're right.
I hope you're right. We have somebody who's actually had professional success outside of education, as Tiffany has had. And you're going to give her. She's going to have a $3 billion budget, and
has children, so she has a stake in the matter too.
Yeah, she has.
Just like me, she's like me. She's a passionate advocate of literacy. I think she's a literacy specialist of some type with experience in our schools. I'm actually a former treasurer of the Loudoun Literacy Council. I mean, literacy matters to these people, including myself. And so it's not about banning books. It's about actual education. And like you said, education matters. So that's why we're all happy to share tonight.
Yeah, we're not saying this is not entitled indoctrination support show. Certainly no. I think we can agree. You're right. This is not. You do not have to base off one's political leaning. Before we go to the Zoom, if you'd like to support efforts on how we can support candidates such as Tiffany, Tiffany, as well as Mike in their election, other efforts as well. Feel free to log on to the Friends of Harry Jackson on the show. I don't know if you can go to that quick site, if you can bring the site up.
I can. Let me go ahead and grab that.
All right. So this is an effort in which I'm using to support school board candidates, as well as other programs, to raise funds for other programs to support excellence in education, parental rights, as well as safety. So if you do have a chance to go in, Friends of Harry Jackson, and would definitely appreciate the support. And it's that's the where the site is. I think we're going to have a website coming up pretty soon, Sam, where we'll be talking about some of the issues, and we'll be directing parents where they can go. And I think let's talk about other meetups. I think that you're having Stephanie, a mama grizzly bear meetup later on this week, aren't you?
I am. I'm really looking forward to that, Harry. I think it's going to be a great one. So more on that later.
More on that later. I heard that you are launching a merchandise line, the Mama Grizzly Bear, MOMMA Grizzly Bear. You have your own wine.
I mean,
Mama
there
Grizzly
can
Bear
be. We're hoping that there will be so many Mama Grizzlies coming in and objecting to explicit materials in libraries. We're just hoping that the county will fill up with them, and we can all work together to encourage educators to focus on academics and to push explicit materials out of schools. And it really does take a village in order to do that. We need to work together. So yes, it will be a Mama Grizzly Bear movement in that direction. I'm really looking forward to the energy and enthusiasm that people are holding for that.
So for more information about the Mama Grizzly Bear movement, of which Stephanie Lundquist-Arora is a co-founder, you can log in and become a member of the Independent Women's Network. There's a forum there where we actually review the material that in the banned books list and banned books challenge. Will actually arm parents with the review of the material as well as specific passages of what might be objectionable. So if you do decide to challenge at your local school library, that you are empowered, that you have the knowledge. You just don't have to say that this book is bad, but now you can actually go to why. You can actually share the actual review that we have. Well, this is a nationwide network. It has over 25,000 members. It's not just education. It covers a variety of women's issues. Their one resource, another excellent resource, it would be for empowering yourself in schools, would be Parents Defending Education.
And if you feel as though you're a more behind the
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
If you feel that you're a more behind the scenes person and you don't necessarily love being out front or speaking out in front of school board members or anything like that, it's a great idea to get involved with the Independent Women's Network, and you can choose any one of those books. There are several hundred, and in some cases you can say, this book seems fine to me. This might be objectionable to some people, but overall it seems fine. And that's a fine review too. I think in some cases, like books that we've mentioned, Graves of Wrath, Catcher in the Rye, 1984, a lot of people feel that way. Some people object to like Harry Potter for its mystical elements. And I'm not sure if that's one of the challenge books or not, but it's perfectly acceptable to read these books and say, I read this. These might be some of the objectionable passages, but I'm fine with this. That's okay too. But it's a really great way to get involved, to log on to Independent Women's Network, IWNetwork.com, and to just choose a book, and you can post in the forum one of the books, what your opinion is on it. Just kind of follow that format. It's a great behind the scenes way to do something to contribute to this movement, and a fantastic organization too.
It is transparent. So like you were actually having a lot of strength behind when you're saying that this book should be in the library, that it's very, very credible. Yes, Clint, you had something, sir?
Yeah, real quick. Some people ask me once in a while, Clint, why do you fight so hard against what's going on in the public schools? Why not just take your kids out? And I understand the sentiment, but we're all taxpayers. We have a moral civic duty to not only protect our own children, but generations to come. And so I feel a very strong passion that this is really, really the issue of our day. And so, it's that issue that keeps us obviously in the fight. But if you really think about the monopoly that American education, the NEA, the LEA, the unions have on American education, what really would change everything, frankly, is school choice. And we need a educational tax credit system here in Virginia that actually gives parents the real dollars in their pocket. They can actually choose, so that these schools, these government-run schools, actually have to now compete for our best and brightest instead of just ignoring parents and their wishes.
Well said, Clint. I mean, there's a lot of support for school choice, and not only for parents in Loudoun, but especially in urban areas as well. It's very popular. In Washington, D.C., all the charter schools have wait lists. Parents want more of them, more options to send their kids so they can select the best option for their children. Certainly in Fairfax County, a lot of parents would support that as well. There's no reason, and we've covered this before in earlier shows, where unfortunately they've segregated the schools down in the southeastern portion of the county, which was unfortunate. We talked about that in our shadow board segment, our last shadow board meeting. But a lot of support for those of you that are watching, that if you think that the achievement gap is something that's concerning to you, school choice is an option that can remedy that solution. And there's a lot of data and a lot of support for that. Well, let's think about
equity
our
is dumbing down our kids. Sorry, go ahead.
They talk about equity, and it's replaced equality. And when people talk about equity, it should have been talked about as providing equity for equal opportunity, not to have equal outcomes. We don't for equal outcomes. Not everyone has equal ability. But you should, if you have an infrastructure access like roadways or public transit systems, yes, equitably distributed, so all the children can go and compete at the same school. I think we all agree on that, right? If someone has if they have a disability, yes, have an equitable solution that provides a reasonable accommodation for them. That is what equity is for. It's to provide equal opportunity. It is not to take away opportunities and force equal outcomes.
That's right.
All right.
It'll help us hold our schools accountable too. Competition is a great motivator.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It most certainly is.
So well said. Well said, Clint.
So there is actually a 30-day comment town hall on Governor Youngkin's transgender policy, which a proposed guidance document. And Sam, I'm going to send that to you if you are interested, so you can have comment. It's in your inbox.
I think that starts September 26th, if I recall.
It does. It starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that is important. The 30-day comment period, and the news article in the Washington Examiner, where they're overhauling it. In fact, one of the reasons the serious issue that happened, we talked about the Scott Smith case that happened in Loudoun County, and that tragedy.
Yeah. In
that was
addition,
unfortunate.
something else that was of recent importance also is the Title IX proposed revisions by the Biden administration that, frankly, would just obliterate female sports in high school and college. And
I've written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting as a parent to actually have your child, your daughter, know that she won't have her scholarship taken away on the soccer team, you need to, as a parent, wake up and realize the forces in play here.
I'll go one further. I'm going into my 18th season as a lacrosse official, so I've been yelled at by parents, from all youth all the way up through college here in this area, Loudoun, Fairfax, and DC area. And I've written an op-ed on this. Like, for the national governing body for high school sports is the National Federation for High School Sports. I do not just lacrosse; I also do basketball and football as well. Now, unless there's a state law prohibiting a biological male from competing in women's category, the only level of safety and protection that girls have is at the discretion of the school's principal that could bar or prohibit a biological male competing with females. Now, so you also have to understand there's a big issue here, because when you are competing by governing sport, they don't have to go through transition. They don't have to be on hormone or testosterone blockers. And even if they were at the levels in some of the sports and they had a disastrous effect, they can still have twice as much testosterone in their body as a female. And the level of degradation, if they've gone through puberty and they do go through the hormone treatment, they're only getting degraded by about 10 to 15%. Now, that's still quite a big difference. And it's a big safety issue, especially contact sports like soccer that allows for contact side to side, basketball that allows for contact side for side. With volleyball, where the net's lower, where that's even dangerous for males to compete, because you can hit that ball with concussive force and break fingers and cause concussions. And we can talk about.
And there was that MMA fighter too. There was a female MMA fighter who had her skull cracked, right, with a transgender fighter who.
Skull cracked.
It's an insult to Title IX.
It is.
So Governor Youngkin has delivered. Governor Youngkin has delivered on his promise. He's now, with his model guidelines released last week, he's gone back now to calling for schools to be, saying the sex that you're assigned at birth should be the bathroom that you go to. The pronouns will tie to your sex assigned at birth. So we're slowly returning to sanity here in Virginia, and now it's going to be a fight, I'm sure, at the local level.
It will be a fight at the local level, because I don't think there's any enforcement mechanism. So I think this is going to be a long-term battle fought in courts, because that Loudoun County and Fairfax County and Arlington County are going to do everything they can to drag their feet and to fight against this and ignore any kind of state level policy, just like they did with masks or anything else that Governor Youngkin has said in the past. They do everything they can to just ignore state law and the Constitution for that matter. But this will be a battle for the courts, I think. But you're right, Clint. I think this is a good move in the right direction.
Harry, thanks for sending me that link. I have that up on the screen. If anybody wants to take part in the public comment period, look it up. Go to townhall.virginia.gov, and we can post that on our resources here as well. I have a question for you, Clint. The recent hubbub up there in Loudoun County regarding this document that I have here. I'm looking at this purpose to establish clear procedures for schools to identify all instructional materials with sexually explicit content, to ensure parental notification of any instructional materials with sexually explicit content, 3, permit parents to review all instructional materials and sexually explicit content, and 4, ensure alternative instructional materials that do not include sexually explicit content are provided in a non-punitive manner, or that for any student whose parent so requests. What's the controversy? I mean, that seems what we're talking about. Relatively, I mean, I don't want the stuff in the schools, but if somebody does and their parent agrees that they should have access to it, seems to me that's what this policy is stating, right? Or what am I missing here?
So school boards locally have to come up by January 1st in compliance with the new VDOE guidelines on sexually explicit content.
Right,
so
the governor's model policies that we've talked about. Right.
Right. And so that's all fine and good. The problem is that they are going to really have challenges doing that because they don't really know what's in their schools. They admittedly said that in the committee meeting. But, on surface, you think that's great. Parents have an opt-out. That way their child has a way to not be exposed to this material. My outrage as a parent and advocate, frankly, is why does it have to be? Why do we even have a policy to begin with? That's really what I'm upset about. This has no redeeming value from a standpoint of academic education. And if we're going to have it at all, let parents opt in, not opt out. I think that actually honors the spirit of the new administration.
Question for you, Clint. How do they disseminate the opt-out forms to parents? How is that received?
Well, typically you get a ton of stuff through your Parent View account at the beginning of the school year that you opt in and opt out of when you register your child.
So you have to have electronic access.
Yeah, but there's also sometimes I think things throughout the year as needed that they'll send you. But I honestly have not seen. We'll see what kind of opt-out comes along with this policy. I don't know if it's going to be forthcoming, sent to every parent, or parents are going to have to seek it out. I know that a lot of the stuff comes through the advisory period. So parents, if you're listening to me, talk to your kid's advisory or your homeroom teacher, and you have access to this material by right under the Pupil Protection Rights Act, the PPRA. You have the right to see the curriculum in each class, including homeroom and advisory.
In the college, in academia at the college, you're allowed to see the curriculum. That's public record. It's part of your accreditation. What's kind of scary is that, if you to graduate from law, you have to be a librarian. You have to have a library science degree that has from an accredited ALA program. That's the level of influence at these schools. Where I was going with that, Clint, was you mentioned before, most of the opt-out forms are sent electronically. And what I was referring to is that the communities that are disproportionately impacted by the opt-in or opt-out are low-income families that don't have internet access at home. And so a lot of these school districts, what they'll be using is that they're data mining. They're data mining the poor, is essentially what they're doing. They're exploiting it, particularly if their primary device is a phone, or if English is a second language. It's not. They don't certainly make it accessible or easily understood how what they're collecting on their children in some of these surveys. We talk about SEL, not the topic of today's topic, but when they start collecting your access of information, they would have to. And I can guarantee, in the Black community and Hispanic community, they would not be for this material being sent to their kids. That's a no-go. I've been to the barbershops in this area, and people are in shock. They're in outrage. And when they found out, in my community, the Fairfax NAACP supporting it, they were in outrage. I think the Loudoun County NAACP supports it too, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure. Carrie, there are two instances lately that parents should be aware of what's going on in our schools. They, we found out recently from a elementary school here in Loudoun. We actually got a copy of they're now keeping attendance by male, female, and non-binary in our elementary school.
Wow.
There's a middle school that a middle school teacher has come to us saying that there is a toxic work environment going on because the dean and the principal apparently are in a relationship, and she is being coerced to promote the Gay Straight Alliance Club, and they're sending emails out to teachers. So there's a lot of toxicity happening in the workplace for a lot of our great Loudoun County public school teachers.
Now, when you mentioned the GSA,
doesn't make it.
Now, there's an important aspect to know there. Most club activities, they're sponsored by the school, and you and parents have access to the rosters. GSAs are typically not. You do not have access to the rosters of a student if the GSA. So if your student joins that alliance and gets exposed to material, you as the parent likely wouldn't know. That's another a little tidbit. And where I was going with this is that, under the guise of for that supporting a lot of this material and books, and I mentioned the NAACP, it was just important to point out that, a lot of other communities don't support this. And does your NAACP chapter even represent the members that they purport to support? That they purport to represent? I mentioned the Fairfax NAACP, it's 90% white, and they're the ones pushing it on behalf of the Black community. Is that same scenario happening in Loudoun County, Fairfax NAACP? Are they astroturfing to give the perception that this has wide support of other communities, which it probably does not? I would venture to say it certainly does not.
I know the Loudoun NAACP is in bed with, so to speak, with the Freedom Center, Michelle Thomas. It's all incestuous relationship with the Loudoun Syndicate, with our Commonwealth Attorney. It's a lot of what I call collusion going on, but it's probably not a legal term. But But the point is that there's a lot of people all tied together in this here in Loudoun that we're hoping real change happens next November in 23 when the whole school board is up for grabs.
Well, let's hope so. Let's see some parents that are concerned or passionate about education and doing the right thing. So are we going to bring up the Zoom right now, see if there's anyone in our audience or members who are watching who might be interested in hearing what they have to say?
Well, I would love to bring in the Zoom. However, we would be just hearing crickets because we don't have anyone in the Zoom room. So
okay.
We'll throw this back out there, and then we'll go ahead. I guess if we don't have any public participation, we can go ahead and close it up. But if you do want to jump in, the room is listed in the show description. And go ahead and jump in Zoom real quick, and we'll bring you into the show.
Bring it. Or if you'd like to.
Dr. Jackson.
All right. And if you'd like to be a guest on this show, to please contact us. Reach out to us on Education Matters at USA.TV. Tell us a little bit about what the issue is, and we'll certainly schedule a time and episode. Any final did we miss anything tonight, since we talked about a lot that's going on? Oh, we didn't really.
One thing I wanted to jump in on was the opt-out forms, and I completely agree with what both of you said. I agree it should be opt-in, not opt-out, and I feel like there's a lot of information that comes from the school, and some of it is just embedded in a very long email, and parents have a tendency to, especially with multiple kids, they don't always read all of the emails that they get from the schools. And one thing I noticed is in years past, when they've had surveys and stuff like that, especially with elementary schoolers, we would get an opt-out form in a hard copy in like the student's take-home folder. And what's happened this year is I didn't receive any hard copies in any take-home folders. I simply got an email with a whole bunch of points, and then at the very bottom it said, and to opt out of this intrusive SEL survey, which is ridiculous. Obviously they don't say it's ridiculous, but it is a ridiculous survey. In order to opt out of it now, you have to send an email to like the principal and the counselor, or maybe the principal and the counselor. And that's just kind of like a little bit hidden in the email. So I know that they paid, Fairfax County in particular, paid $2.4 million over 5 years to Panorama for these SEL surveys to collect data, intrusive data on our kids. So I do think that there's a movement to making opt-out even harder. And then they said that you can opt out on the parent view, as you mentioned, but you can only use your digital signature if you have acknowledged receipt of the and that you've read or whatever, agree to, I'm not sure, the student rights and responsibilities, which a lot of conservatives have boycotted. So you're not allowed to use your digital signature to do anything on Parent View if you haven't signed that you received and read the student rights and responsibilities. So it's kind of like they say, oh, you can opt out, but I feel like they're trying to like make it a little bit harder for you to do that. So it's kind of interesting. So all the more reason to have opt in, not opt out. So yes, Clint, I agree.
Yes, there's no reason. And the other thing too is that go ahead.
No, I was go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
Oh no, I was mentioning about the opt-in. You have to also look at the state of security of the systems that are being hosted. A lot of these systems and information are on third-party servers, and not all cloud providers are created equal. If you look at Panorama, they kind of admit that, well, they just kind of get like the bare minimum, and that parents have to understand that a data breach could happen, which is unacceptable for a cloud provider. It's considered an extinction level event if they have a breach. And look at Amazon security. Yes. I mean, it's top notch. It really is. But other data centers may be unmanned. They may not be supported with a lot of retention policies to support forensics if there is a breach. So they may not even have intrusion detection, which I've experienced that, where I've pinged an externally facing website or had it pinged from a single IP address for 30 days. It was indicating it didn't have an intrusion detection system, and that was supporting data, PII. It was unacceptable for federal government. It's certainly unacceptable for student data. So that's a big issue, because a lot of our school districts, especially when they're dealing with billions of dollars, like Loudoun County, Prince William County, Arlington, and Fairfax, they are targets for ransomware because they know that they'll pay it. They'll know that they'll go for the cheap option and get a cyber insurance policy to pay an insurance premium. I mean, that's why school districts around the country are getting targeted, getting hit. They're not investing it. Our county, I don't know if it's the same with yours. We don't have a chief information security officer. I think we just hired one, but they don't even have the basic policies and frameworks down for what they're supposed to follow. Wow.
Well, I just thought I'd say one quick word as we wrap up. I really want to talk to the parents out there. You know, as a father of 5 who've all gone through Loudoun County Public Schools, you have one shot, parents, to get this right. You have one shot at your child's education. Don't waste it. And I would ask you to think about here, 44 days, you're going to have a choice starting here in Loudoun for 2 seats that are up, and then all 9 next year in November. Please vote. We need a lot of parents coming out to care about parental rights. Ask if your child is better off than they were just 3 years ago in 2019 before COVID, when some of these unions and teachers, they wouldn't reopen the schools. And is your child really better off with all this equity stuff versus the academics? You have one shot, and you owe it to your kid to give them the best education possible that is free of political ideology and controversial social constructivist agendas.
Well said.
So well said. That was
very well said.
Absolutely.
Especially in between where you are on the spectrum. I mean, obviously, if you're conservative equity, we all know what they mean by that with equal outcomes. For those of you that consider yourselves more moderate, what they really mean by equity is they mean lower by taking away opportunities for higher performing students, and they're trying to and it's to hide and to obfuscate the people that they fail to serve that really do need the more support. They're just taking away resources from those that may have worked and earned for it. They've miscategorized people as resource hoarders or overrepresented. And it's led to racial discrimination, as we saw at Thomas Jefferson High School, and that's going to court. That's going to be seen in the Supreme Court. I mean, and CRT is more than just race. It also deals with the gender ideology too. It's a 1-2. So, but votes. Voting does matter. This election does matter. Vote for the best candidate. Do you really want to bring some young 20-something with absolutely no work experience, no kids in the system? They're using it as a stepping stone to further a political career, or are you going to vote for a parent that actually understands the issues like what special need kids what they require? That's what equity is meant for. To support, and these are the people we want on a school board. People that are doing it for the right reasons, that care for their kids and want to see all children thrive.
Yes.
It's such a good point. And on the flip side to that is, even if you don't have kids in public schools, let's say you have your kids in private school, or your kids are grown, or you don't have any children, I mean, you're still paying property taxes. But even if your children are in public schools and you've already voted with your feet, this is the generation that our children are growing up with, regardless of whether or not they're public school students. What do we want for the future of our country? What exactly do we want? So your problems aren't solved if you just go to private school. If you're a patriot, you should still care about the health of public education for the sake of our future. So it's relevant to all of us.
You're not safe just in private school. It's infested private schools too. If you look at Parents Defending Education, the resource center, they have a lot of resources where this ideology has crept its way into private schools as well. And some parents in those communities feel like they don't have a choice because the school really calls all the shots at that point.
It's so true. And they're paying for it. But my point is, a lot of people who have moved to private school kind of disengage, and they feel like they're done with it and they're not concerned. And I don't think that's right, because you've voted with your feet, you've gone to a different school, but you still need to be concerned as citizens about the health of the public school and about who your school board members are, because you're still paying taxes. So, and these are the kids these are the people that your children are going to grow up with.
Half of your property taxes are using to pay for these schools. And when's the last time your school had an audit? Why are they raising the property tax on your vehicle in your home? And it's just increasing. I think Loudoun, they have more money than they know what to do with all the data center money that's out there. I mean, and they're using it. And how are they using their discretionary funding? Are they using it to promote this type of material? And again, even though your child's at a private school, they're going to interact with these public school kids in some juncture, either athletics or camps or something like that. You need to be aware. I mean, that this
on your lacrosse field, Terry.
Especially on the lacrosse field, I've seen it.
And as a business owner here in Loudoun, I'll tell you as well, think about it, parents, you don't want someone on the board who is an educator, a teacher, because that's an inherent conflict of interest. They're voting for their own pay raises. You also don't want a young, inexperienced person. You want someone with some grit, who has the backbone to stand up against the woke agenda that's out there harming your children. Your children are being harmed and dumbed down. You actually need business people. You need smart, intellectual people with life experience. And whether it's Loudoun with the $1.5 billion budget or Fairfax with $4 billion, these are serious matters. You don't just want the local advocate, who's been endorsed by the local education association necessarily. You want someone with real understanding of how to run a business. It's funny. We're actually in the education business. We just happen to be, we're transportation business, we're construction business, and it's a huge enterprise.
It's kind of funny. What was that movie with Kevin Spacey where he says that the individual that doesn't follow their heart, that doesn't follow their passions in their 20s has no heart, which I think some of the 21s are doing. They have passion. But if you keep doing that after you're 30, you have no brain, right? We want to bring in somebody who has a brain into your school board, who can make the right call, who can say, this book is inappropriate, and look at this and say, yes, I kind of agree with that. That I'm trying to challenge the literary value in this book. It doesn't.
Let's make another proclamation.
No,
every month there's proclamations.
With genderqueer though, you saw those images. We showed those images. Like who honestly could have a straight face and hold that book up and say, this is really a great literary contribution and it is age appropriate. I mean, who could say that? It's absurd.
And they gave it an award, and nobody in the room said, let's recommend this to go into middle school libraries. Even like if you look at like the Unitarian Universalist Church, they'll put it as an adult book. Like that's the book you buy in the red light district in Amsterdam, right? Okay, I mean, adults do adult things, right? But now you want to push it to an 11-year-old? Like no one said, hey, I have a concern here. Maybe someone might flip out. I mean, they're aware of it. I mean, you heard Emily Drabinski say, well, I think some of our librarians are feeling unsafe. Gee, I wonder, you're pushing grooming material on someone's kids. I'm sure you're going to find some parents who are not going to react very well to that. I can see why you feel unsafe and disappointed.
I read a quote today that was pretty interesting. It said that wrong does not become right, and evil does not become good just because the majority agrees with it. So no matter what your neighbors are saying, no matter what your neighbors are saying, your PTA, stand up for your kids. Parents, wake up and stand up for your kids. Defend your kids. That is your God-given constitutional right.
Well, you also can't just
absolutely.
I have to jump in on that. I mean, my goodness gracious. Does anybody really truly believe that the majority of American adults would look at that content that we just brought up and talked about and showed tonight?
And we're afraid that we would get shut down for it.
The majority of Americans are okay with that. Not only just like passively, all right, whatever, it's fine, but actually going out there and saying this is beneficial and we need to show the children this stuff. Do you really think that the majority of Americans feel that way? I don't. I'm sorry.
I don't think they're aware of it, and I say that with friends on across the political spectrum. Sam, I mentioned earlier. I can go to a progressive hacker conference and I talk about this material, and some people think, well, you're parroting talking points from the far right. I'm like, no, guys, you know me for a while. Like I'm more of the centrist. This is the material they're having. They look at it like, what? Who would give this to a child? Who would think that this is who would do that?
Well, I mean, apparently the American Library Association.
Apparently,
I'm flabbergasted by this. I really.
And they go so far as to say, if you object to it, they insinuate that you're a bigot. You're only objecting to it because you're anti-trans or you have a problem with gay people. Right. They don't say, oh, obviously this is pornographic. They say you object to it because you're a bigot. I mean, this is getting insane. Like, this has to stop.
Yeah, 2 points. Did you know that John Dewey, the author of Progressive Education in America, over 100 years ago, who brought all this in, he was part of the Frankfurt School in Germany and part of Karl Marx. He's actually an honorary lifetime president of both the AFT and the NEA. A lot of people don't know that. Wow. And also, a real quick story. A lot of people, to Sam's point, they're afraid to stop clapping. There's a story that 1937. There was a speech being given over in Soviet Union for Stalin, Joseph Stalin, and the crowd basically started clapping, and they kept clapping for Stalin for 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 minutes. Finally, someone stopped clapping, and I think it was a business owner, or I forget exactly his occupation. He sat down, and that person was jailed in Soviet Union for 10 years. He was canceled. Americans are fearful of being canceled, and parents need to rise up and say, no, I'm going to do what's right for my kids, no matter the cost.
I actually did get a YouTube comment or two. Joe Mobley says hello, and helped us out by sharing this out. And Packed Parents Against Critical Theory responded and said it's all Michelle Thomas. I don't know what that means. And then a Mama Grizzly, that's the YouTube handle, says Joe Mobley associates with Harry Jackson and Stephanie Lundquist-Arora.
He has great taste.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
Are we in sixth grade?
I can't
believe that he talks to them.
I can give you the backstory of Michelle Thomas if you like, in the story of Loudoun County. If you want to spend another 5 minutes on it.
What is it? What's going on?
We should do the plug. You should watch the Joe Mobley Show. I mean, why not?
Hey, he plugged us.
He's a blogger here in Loudon. Yes.
He plugged us. Give him a little love back, right?
Absolutely. Go support him. Go support Joe Mobley.
He's a fellow dad here in Loudon. Great guy.
Yeah, parents. A lot of parents are concerned about what they see going on in these schools. All right. Well, let's see. Is there the comments on the US? You said it's on the YouTube. USA Now. That's you.
Yeah, that's it. There was just a few up there, buddy.
Oh, just a few. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
quiet night. Hey, I would like to take the opportunity, though, Harry. You invited people to come on to the show, but more than that, I mean, I really want to invite people to engage with us and utilize this platform to potentially start their own shows and their shadow boards locally. Use this platform and these technologies as so many are as a source of amplifying your voice. So I'll put that invitation out there for anybody who wants to get in touch with us and see how we may be able to help you amplify your voice and tell your stories wherever you may be here in this great country we call America.
Absolutely.
And thanks for helping us do that, Sam.
It's my pleasure, and it's fun.
Sam's a great guy too, by the way.
Yes.
Well, I think we're ready.
Quite the guitarist, I hear.
No.
Yes.
Actually, no. I am so out of shape. I actually joined a band down here in North Carolina. I had an audition last week and hooked up with a band, which is pretty cool, doing some soul and funk and some classic rock stuff. So looking forward to it. I'm doing some singing and playing with them. Anyway, that's the big news. I moved out of Nova.
You escaped.
Lucky you.
I did.
We're coming to stay with
wonderful. You. I really truly do have to say that North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina is definitely a more welcoming and let's just say warmer environment socially, and it really is. I mean, I made some great friends up there, including you guys and a small circle of folks, but just generally across the board, out and about in public, it's astonishing the difference between the people here and there. Just say it.
I'm glad you got to. I can only imagine. We're envious. You've got better food down there. Barbecue.
Yeah, Max and Matthews, North Carolina. Oh my gosh, went there the other night. Fabulous.
We're jealous.
Yeah, that's great.
Now you're making us jealous. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
y'all got to come down. Y'all got to come down and take a trip, and we can do some shows.
Oh,
from down there.
absolutely. I need to purge
That would be
myself
great.
from Northern Virginia area for a while.
There we go.
Definitely will make my way.
All right.
Well,
so
I think we've covered everything.
thanks for
we
letting
wanted
me
to
chime
cover.
in, guys. Clint, good seeing you again. Stephanie, we'll see you guys next show round. There you go, Harry.
Always a pleasure.
Great. And just to quickly wrap up, thank you very much. Stephanie, the Mama Grizzly Bear, Lundquist-Arora, Mr. Clint Thomas. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. Anything else you want to say before we depart?
Our
Thanks so
kids are
much,
made in
Harry.
God's
Thanks for
image.
having us.
Yeah, these kids are so precious. They're made in God's image, and it just matters so much that we get this right. Whether you're gender confused, whether you're gay, lesbian, whatever, that's not the point. The point is that our kids deserve better.
Yep.
Well said.
Yes. Well done.
And I'll give you an amen, Mr. Thomas. Amen to that.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
All right. Mama Grizzly, is there any last words, any final thoughts?
That's it for me. Thanks so much for having us on the show, Harry. This was great.
Great, and best of luck to you at your meetup later on this week. We'll look forward to seeing seeing how your movement progresses.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you both for joining us. Education Matters. Well, folks,
Nice
this
to see you,
wraps up, and this is Harry Jackson, Papa Grizzly, just signing off. Thank you for joining us in Education Matters, and join us next time. Thank you.